Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2. Today I wanted to show you guys how you can set up your Hydra Sorcerer to easily get into Torment 4 and just absolutely annihilate everything. I've been playing a pretty decent bit, but not anything crazy like some other people. I'm not like Paragon 200 already like your boy Wodiho is. I'm sitting at about Paragon 139. My glyphs are like, only like level 20 or something like that. A lot of my gear is not masterworked at all. Just missing a ton of optimization, and already with like probably about 12 hours of playtime, just cruising through Torment 4. So today I wanted to go over how you guys can very easily emulate that, do it yourself, and also wanted to go over some just generic tips and other things that I've discovered while setting up my own character. A lot of things that I'm testing out, and there's actually multiple different ways to set this up, so if anything does change, it will be posted in the build link here. I'd recommend checking this out. There will be a link down in the description. If anything does change, it will be updated here, so I'd always just go to follow this. I'm mainly going to be talking about the crit ancestral endgame variation of the build currently. I will briefly mention why there is a burn and a crit setup in a second here. If you are still throughout the leveling process, just plop this open, go on the 1 to 60 no unique version, and then the early endgame version will help you out through about Torment 1 to Torment 2. And once you're in the Torment tiers, then I would start to try to emulate the ancestral endgame version of the build. Once you're in endgame, the single most important thing for you to start making this build do a shit ton of damage is getting the Ophidian Iris. The Ophidian Iris by default drops from Duriel, the Harbinger of Hatred, and Andariel. I wouldn't recommend trying to farm materials for these. I would honestly, and how I got my first Ophidian Iris, and as you can see, mine is a crazy roll, so I got very lucky, but the way to get materials, the way they get boss materials, but also the way that I got my first Ophidian Iris was simply through a reputation upgrade through the Horadric knowledge here. I found that doing Infernal Compasses or Undercity runs gives you a crap ton of Horadric knowledge, so if you're still trying to max that out, I would just beeline those two things. And then you should get an Ophidian Iris either, like I said, from one of those boxes, or from just killing Duriel and Dariel or Harbinger of Hatred. You should have no problem killing that boss on Torment 1, even missing the Ophidian Iris, and then you should be able to get one. The functionality of this is more important than the roll. Ideally, you want the Primordial Binding to be greater affix, but beggars can't be choosers. You mainly just want the bottom portion to be a high roll, which is each head above 3 that it would have, the Hydra grows and deals 100% increased damage. The way that you are able to take advantage of this is by just tempering on. Casted Hydras have extra heads, so once you get the Ophidian Iris, the second most important thing to do is to get yourself an Ancestral Staff, ideally, but if you don't have one, that's okay. And temper on, Casted Hydras have additional heads, and try to get the Masterwork crit to land on the Hydras have extra heads at least one time, and then just upgrade it full send to like 8 out of 12. The first 8 isn't as expensive, but getting the Masterwork crit on at least the first hit will mean that it scales up incrementally in batches of 2, and as you can see, mine is only 9 out of 12, but I got that crit on just the heads, and I have an additional 8 heads, which for the purposes of the amulet is an extra 800% damage for my Hydra. And then I slammed on a Serpentine aspect. For some reason I didn't get this until like Paragon level 50. It was insane, but getting this is a massive damage increase. And then you try to just scale up your mana a little bit, and then your Hydras will do hundreds and hundreds of percentages of extra damage. So just these two things together makes your Hydras do well in the order of like 2,000% extra damage, and that's where you're going to start cranking out a lot of damage. All the other stuff I will of course talk about, and there's a lot of variation with skills, gear, etc. One thing that is very important to mention is going a burn setup via combustion versus an Essus Ferocity setup, which is what I refer to as crit in the build guide here. In the early game or in the while you were leveling, you probably noticed that I was using combustion, and I recommended that. And the reason for that is that on paper, combustion seems like it would be better because the modifiers for just doing burn damage are higher. So engulfing flames is a higher modifier. And even if you go in the Paragon board here, the burning instinct node is also a higher modifier. But personally, I was in about, I'd say like 40 Paragon levels ago or so. I simply just wanted to test combustion setup versus crit setup, and this is with my crit setup being at a very significant disadvantage relative to my burn setup because I've been playing burn for a while. Long story short, I swapped to a full crit setup as a damage. So maybe burn just needs like the perfect setup to kind of scale better, or like with maybe later into the end game we'll find that burn is better for whatever reason, or because they changed this is just bugged or something and giving way more crit damage than it should. Who knows? Too early to tell. All I'm going to say is that as it stands right now, the direct damage of the build seems to be vastly superior to the burn version. So for all intents and purposes for now, just follow the crit version. It also just makes clearing things significantly faster. In order to optimize for the crit version, you really don't have to change all that much. It's effectively the same build as the burn version. The only thing you really do is you take this point out and move it over here. Insane. You get like a little bit of crit damage on your gear or something. You don't take Endless Pyre, and then you swap one Paragon node, Burning Instinct to Searing Heat, and that is effectively the only things that you really need to change in order to make maybe like one glyph or so, in order to make the direct damage version work. So if you've been doing burn, don't feel like you're screwed or something, you can easily swap to this, and even without the optimizations, it will just simply do more damage. So that is why there are multiple variations on here, and that is why I now recommend direct damage. Anyways, when it comes to skills, I'd say the most important thing is enchants. I would pretty much recommend familiar enchant almost all the time. The reason for this is it counts for enchantment master, giving you 40% increased fire damage, and also anytime that you spawn a Hydra, you have a chance to spawn a familiar, which helps you stack up your ranks of primordial binding, which is quite nice. For your last enchant, you can do teleport for movement, which is what I quite like. You can also do Hydra. The issue with Hydra enchant, though, is that it does not gain the benefit of Ophidian Iris because the Hydra enchant is capped to only having 5 heads. So the effect of this is going to be worse and worse, or do less relative damage to your normal weapon, or your normal Hydras rather, because your weapon is going to increasingly get more and more Hydra heads as you get better gear. Teleport enchant is effectively just for movement there. Alternatively, you could do like Ice Blades enchant very later into the build or something, but honestly that is not really necessary either. Personally, I just like doing the familiar and the teleport. When it comes to the skills that are on our bar here, almost all of these are interchangeable outside of Hydra, of course, and maybe like Ice Armor for defense. I'm just going to go over why I have each of them, and I will probably be fine-tuning this with the Ancestral version of the build, or Mythic version, but if you have a preference for what skill you want to use, I would just go for it. You can use all sorts of different stuff. So I have Inferno on for the ult. I really like having the 50% increased damage here. Inferno also has a pixel pull, which is pretty nice, and I personally am using Flicker Step, so I have pretty low cooldown on my Inferno. I can spam it pretty regularly. Then I have Ice Shards. The reason for Ice Shards is Hail of Verglas. I'll talk about that later, but otherwise I would just have on Flame Shield here. Basically the same thing. Familiar I have because I found that when I don't have Familiar on the bar, it's hard to keep up 10 stacks of Primordial Binding. With better gear, it's probably easier to keep up the stacks, but for now I like to have this just for consistency. Ice Armor is good for defense mainly. And then I have Teleport because I don't have enough cooldown reduction to instantly spam my evade as of right now. So I still like to have the option here, but that's optional. And other options that you could put on, or other things that you can put on rather, would be Flame Shield, of course, and you can have Flame Shield in addition to the Ice Shards with the Hail of Verglas. Some people are doing Lightning Spear with the Vulnerable application here. Don't really think this is necessary because one of our runes is going to be doing this, but if you were to swap out one of those runes, then you could use this for Vulnerable application. Ice Blades is okay because it gives you 10% increased attack speed, but 10% increased attack speed is really not all that significant in my opinion. Skill tree is pretty straightforward. I would just copy paste what I have down in the description. When it comes to gear and uniques, what stuff you kind of want to be looking out for, like I said, I would try to get Ophidian Iris as soon as humanly possible, and then next to that, just get a weapon and try to temper it. These two things are going to give you the single most amount of damage that you can possibly have with your build. And then next, I would go for a Talrasha. It's 25% increased damage per stack, and if you just use Teleport, Ice Armor, and Teleport every once in a while, right, then you're getting that 75% increased damage. And Talrasha also has cooldown reduction on it, which is quite nice. Another unique that is very good for the build is Axial Conduit. The reason for this is it has increased maximum resource, which scales our Serpentine aspect, which is why we have a two-hander, because Serpentine is just going to give us so much damage. Later into the build, you'll have much more total mana, but right now I have 167 mana, and per mana point that I have, my Hydra does 2.8% increased damage, so if I simply just multiply that by 2.8, my Hydra has 467% increased damage from Serpentine, and if I were to have Serpentine on a one-hander, that would be cut in half. So instead of 400% increased damage, I would have 200%. So that's about a 100% Mathematically, it's about a double damage that I'm getting from having this on a two-hander, which makes it better than having a one-hander, and the value of this would get scaled up more based on how much resource I have. So effectively, better gear makes this decision even more better, or more important rather. So Axial Conduit is great. You can use Tybalt's Will instead if you want, but Axial Conduit just gets a huge resource gen roll, which is very good, and he also has flat DR on it, which is pretty good. And then we have Hail of Verglass. The reason for Hail of Verglass is, first of all, it has very good stats, has int, attack speed, cooldown reduction. All three of those are premium damage related stats, but it also has the bottom effect here where Ice Shards makes the enemy take 100% increased damage. This is good on bosses, but it's effectively useless for mobbing unless you're in very high tiers of the pit. So I would say when you have better gear, this gets better. If you're very, very early into the endgame, you can use a normal helmet like I have here to just give you like some basic defenses or intelligence, max HP, and then slam on like, armor or something like that if you're still having issues with armor. Hail of Verglass, I would say, is mainly to just increase your boss damage and is absolutely optional. It is double damage against the bosses, but it is annoying. You have to press Ice Shards, and then you have to put Ice Shards on your bar. I would say it's not that big of an opportunity cost because what you can otherwise get on a helmet isn't super important, and you actually have so much freedom with your skills here that having to put Ice Shards there isn't the biggest waste in the world, in my opinion. Nonetheless, let's go over stats on individual rolls. Oh, I guess I didn't mention Flicker Step. A lot of people use normal boots. You can use normal boots with aspect of Orange Herald if you prefer. I really like Flicker Step because, first of all, let me show just a demonstration here of multiple target dummies. So, first of all, Flicker Step has attacks reduce evade cooldown by 2.5 seconds, which pairs very nicely with the teleport enchant. So normal boots only go up to 1.5, but this being 2.5 means it's much easier to get your teleport back. And that's very good early into the game because you don't have much cooldown reduction for your teleport to be a really low cooldown. So it just helps you spam the evade more. But it also has damage reduction from close on it, which is a good defensive stat. And each enemy you evade through reduces your ultimate cooldown. So we can have pretty good uptime on our Inferno, which is a 50% damage increase. So you can see I can press my Inferno here. I can spacebar one time, get some of it back, spacebar again. And as you get better gear, more cooldown reduction stuff, you'll be able to spam it more. But that was about 3 evades and I was able to get it back. And one thing that's nice about Ice Shards is you can kind of spam the Ice Shards, and after 3 attacks you'll get your evade back. With a tiny bit more cooldown, that would be only 2 attacks. So with a bit more cooldown reduction, it'll be much smoother to actually play with the build. Step rant over, let's talk about what you want on each piece of gear. Helmet, if you have a Hail of Verglass, try to get cooldown reduction GA. Int is good as well, and focus on the bottom roll being good. If you're using a normal helmet, I would go for Int, max HP, ranks to Hydra, cooldown reduction, or mana per second are all very good. I'll talk about mana in a second. I'd say ideally you want cooldown reduction, intelligence, max HP, or armor. That would probably be my go-to there. For the chest, mine is kind of crappy. You want armor if you still need armor. And then I put disobedience aspect on here as well because I'm still not armor capped. But when I'm fighting mobs, I get armor capped with Rahir here. So I probably wouldn't need this flat armor roll. And then I would do intelligence rather than the resistance that I have here. And / or mana per second. Axial Conduit, you want the resource generation. If you have normal pants, just go for intelligence, max HP, armor, mana per second, that sort of thing. Boots, already talked about. The only roll you care about on Flicker Step is damage reduction from close. If you have normal boots, go for intelligence, max HP, mana per second. On your weapon, you want intelligence, greater affix ideally, and then you want maximum life. And then one thing that you could try out, that I want to try out, is lucky hit chance to gain primary resource. That will probably help a lot with mana. But again, I'll talk about mana in a second. Other than that, you can get like crit damage, vulnerable damage. That's perfectly fine. And then you want to temper on Hydra damage, and same with the gloves. Oh, I just completely skipped over the gloves because I'm an idiot. So we'll talk about gloves now. Well, weapon, make sure to get the Hydras plus half heads, and then the extra Hydra damage. Gloves, you want intelligence, max life, ranks to core skills. Got very lucky with this. And then you want Hydra damage temper. And then for our aspect, we have Flash Fire to increase our crit damage. Storm Swell is also a good aspect. There's multiple good aspects. They're all in the range of like 35 to 45% increased damage. Just go with whatever aspect roll you got higher, or if you have some preference, do that. Tarasha, you want cooldown reduction, greater affix. Your other ring, you want intelligence, maximum life, and then you'd want either attack speed or crit chance. I rolled this 5,000 times and got very unlucky. And then you want Hydra damage, and you want Inferno cooldown reduction as your resource temper. And then Ophidian Iris, try to get Greater Affix Primordial Binding, try to have the crits land on Primordial Binding. That's what you want. Let's talk about mana real quick. The reason that there is a mana section at all is because anytime that you use Serpentine, it's going to instantly drain your mana to 0. You can see that my mana goes up pretty quickly here. The main reason for that is actually going to be Primordial Binding ranks. So Primordial Binding gives you a ton of mana regeneration based on how many summons you have. We permanently have 10 summons out. And there's multiple reasons for this, but mainly, obviously, Hydra and Familiar is going to give us a lot of extra summons, so we just have that mana regen all the time. You can see it still takes like 2 seconds or so to get full, so when we're playing, we don't want to just spam our Hydras, we kind of want to wait for our mana to be full to gain full benefit of this. One way to increase how much mana you're getting is simply by just getting a mana per second roll on chest, helmet, or boots. That is pretty good. A greater affix one is about 6 mana per second, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're scaling that by like 400%, it actually fills up your mana quite quickly. Getting more resource gen on your axial conduit also definitely helps. And runes can also help quite a lot. So currently I'm using Pak with Ke to spawn the Spirit Wolves. The Spirit Wolves are very important because they count as 1 stack toward our Primordial Binding, but they also are going to apply vulnerable pretty much instantly to all mobs. So this is very effective for us, not only just have consistency with the damage here, but also for our vulnerable application. And then we have, I have Ahu here, which is a legendary one, and you honestly don't need this, but I've been trying out Lum, which is a blue rune here, which gives you resource. Let me see if I have an extra one. Yeah, this one. It gives you resource. I actually tried this with Pak, which in theory would be like spend all of your resource to then get it right back because it would overflow, but it actually just doesn't work at all with Pak, which is very unfortunate. So, and Lum itself really isn't proccing all that much. I'm getting a little bit of benefit out of it because anytime I lucky hit with Ahu, I'm getting a tiny bit of resource back, but it's not all that significant, and you would probably rather have something that gives you actual damage like Ohm. And I think honestly, the way to play with this is to just wait every 1 second or so, and then you'll get your resource back, and it's really not that big of a deal. And just gradually, as you get better gear, your resource will just start to feel a little bit better. You just don't want to be spamming. I think lucky hit chance to restore primary resource on a staff, especially if you can get it like greater affix or something, probably has a likelihood to every once in a while like instantly refill your mana, and you're just losing an additive damage roll, which isn't significant, maybe in the order of like 5% total damage or something like that. So that would probably help, but I'd say the mana is okay how it is right now. I did notice that with the Yom rune, if you proc this, it does instantly give you full mana because it gives you a lot of flat resource. If there was a way to like proc this over and over again, it would be good, but it inherently has a cooldown of 5 seconds, so you can't really take that much advantage of it, unfortunately. But yeah, I'd say that's pretty much it for the gear. When it comes to the Horadric Powers, I've barely even gotten any of these, but one that helps with your mana quite a lot is actually Reactive Ooze. Gives you 20% max resource gen per second. It's pretty decent. I've noticed a little uptick in mana since I've had it. I have Frigid Heart just to freeze stuff. I don't really know why. There's probably some benefit. You could maybe put 3 points into Hoarfrost here for 18% increased damage. I might play with Frost Nova rune later on into the build or something. This is just there, honestly. And then I have Bloody Charm for the Execute. If it was up to me, maybe I would use Tranquil Stone instead of Frigid Heart. It really doesn't matter. A lot of these, I'm going to be honest with you guys, are kind of crappy. I would say Bottled Wind is very, very good because it's just a lot of defense. So I'd probably go for Bottled Wind and Reactive Ooze at all times. And your third one can kind of just be whatever. Bloody Charm is fine. I'm probably going to level up my Cosmic Anomaly and use that instead of the Propulsion, but I've been using Propulsion. If you want more movement speed, if you're like speed farming, Floaty Bubble is pretty good because it will give you effectively an additional teleport. So that can feel pretty nice. And honestly, the rest of these are pretty crappy. One thing that is very good that I'm currently missing is going to be these idols here. So Scornful Light, 20% increased damage. Idol from Below, primary stat. And Reverie Horn, giving you 50% increased summon damage. I'm missing this currently, so this would be a pretty significant boost in damage, which I would definitely go out of your way to look for. I crafted this one, which is damage over time. And even with this being on, burn was still significantly worse for me. Paragon Board will be linked down below. When you're early into the endgame, and as you can see, I'm missing multiple glyph slots because I just am still low Paragon level. When you're low level, what I would do is I would try to get Conjurer because you're going to be missing a little bit of crit chance. So this helps you just get 15% more crit right off the bat, so you just have 100% crit, which is how we're scaling our build a lot. And then what I would do is I would instantly go to Enchantment Master, and then I would instantly go and grab a Searing Heat because this also gives 15% crit chance. And then you start scaling a little bit of crit damage. If you get like a crit damage roll on your weapon, for example, then you'll have pretty much full value of Searing Heat, which is pretty nice. And then I went up and grabbed Fundamental Release for a 50% damage multi pretty much all the time, and there's a little bit of crit right here. I literally just, boom, grabbed that, got this glyph, and then boom, grabbed this. So you can see that I have 2 Paragon boards that don't have any glyphs, and that's because getting the legendary nodes is just way more valuable than actually getting the glyphs. And once I, fill this out, I'll have more glyphs, but like obviously I'm missing a ton of damage. My glyphs are level 20, I'm low Paragon board, whatever. I would just go out of your way to try to get the legendary nodes ASAP, and Destruction is a good way. I actually went and got this because this wasn't capped, so Destruction, you slam it in here, gives you some crit damage with these nodes as well, then that'll kind of max out your Searing Heat board, and then you just have all the extra damage from these nodes at only level 139. When you're early into the endgame, I would recommend crafting elixirs. The Elixir of Resourcefulness is quite nice for 25 maximum resource. You could also go for increased attack speed or something like that. That would be decent too. Or the crit chance one. I would probably go attack speed rather than that, but the resource one is pretty nice. And then crafting some incenses is good as well if you're having issues with either your armor or your resistance, which will just be fixed with better gear. I would go for Soothing Spices for flat armor, and then I'd also go for, where's it here? You could do Redamine Buzz, or you could do Song on the Mountain if you still need more armor. Just going to do a chill Pit 60 real quick. Like I said, my character kind of sucks. If my character was better, I'm pretty sure I just play for like, 3 more hours or whatever, and I'll be in Pit 90s no problem. But I kind of just wanted to get the video out there for you guys that may be struggling, and to just show you guys how you can set it up. But playing with the actual build is pretty easy. You can ignore a lot of the buttons if you want to, if it's like overwhelming to have too many buttons or whatever. I would say the main thing is just don't try to spam your Hydra, because if you spam your Hydra, you're constantly spamming or casting ones that don't have full benefit of Serpentine, and Serpentine is a huge portion of our damage, so you want to be waiting until you're full mana here. And otherwise, just press stuff on cooldown. If you're using Flicker Step, try to use your teleport through the mob so you can get your Inferno back. If you have Ale of Verglass on, anytime you find like a tanky mob, you can put down or like press Ice Shards or whatever. I pretty much only do that on bosses. If you have Flame Shield instead, then just use Flame Shield whenever you feel like you are in danger. But otherwise, build is very, very simple. Spam Ice Armor, and your Ice Armor gets back pretty much instantly because of the node that gives you cooldown reduction based on how much mana you spend. So this kind of helps. Spamming our Ice Armor gives you a lot of defense, but it also helps with your uptime on Tarasha stacks. Otherwise, I kind of just slam the ult on cooldown. The damage buff from it doesn't last too long. It's like 5 or 6 seconds or so. But you'll have it up a lot of the time, and when the build gets a little bit better, you'll have it up 100% of the time. I'm pretty sure of that. Otherwise, you can see we're able to clear pretty quickly. That was the problem that I had with the burn setup, is that like the damage was ramping as well. So not only did it just do less damage, it was also just less fun to play with and slower. So straight up, the direct damage seems to just be better, which is kind of sad. I kind of wanted like a big dot tick. I wanted to see like, crazy dot damage by the end of like a boss fight or something. It doesn't really work like that, unfortunately, and it just seems to be that either direct damage is bugged or burn damage is bugged, or who knows what's going on, right? It's Diablo. There's spaghetti code involved. Nobody can really say for sure either way. People are already doing Pit 100 with this, so something is definitely off. The build just does absolutely ridiculous damage right off the rip. When it comes to the bosses, you just want to put down your Hydras, use your Inferno, spam the Air of Verglass to just get that damage buff up, and then every once in a while kind of just reapply your Hydras there. So that was it. That was pretty easy. Don't know what glyph I want to level. I'm still just leveling this one, I suppose. And then I can go do a Torment 3 boss kill for you guys as well. Real quick, I'll just demonstrate a Torment 3 boss kill. And keep in mind, this is day 1 of the game being out. Torment 4 will be pretty easy, just in a couple hours of gaming. But just wanted to demonstrate how it kind of goes. So I pretty much just put down the Hydras and give it a second just to get my mana back. And now that I have all my Hydras out, then I use Air of Verglass a little bit, and he pretty much instantaneously died, right? I just wouldn't kill it in Torment 4 super, super fast. We got a new Ami here. Godslayer Crown. Unlucky. I could probably easily kill it in Torment 4. It would probably just take a few seconds, whereas in Torment 3 I can just kill it pretty much instantly, right? Alright, I'll have a perfected version of this posted pretty soon. Thanks for watching. If anything changes, it will be updated in the build link, so make sure to check that out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.